eventually, one comes to the pretty obvious conclusion that the human experience, the life of a human being, really, really boils down to attention and one's quality of attention, one's ability to sustain attention. Because attention is working all the time on two levels. It's working on the fine, pinpoint, spotlight version of attention, and it's also working with floodlight attention. And those two come together to merge and include everything in between. And if a person isn't able to hold their attention on something for extended periods of time, or even just sit quietly and think for extended periods of time, it's going to be very, very difficult to cultivate a certain depth, a certain understanding of the world, of themselves, of people, of their life, of existence, or really understand any subject or area of life. If you think about it like watching a YouTube video that's 55 minutes long, if you only watch 5 seconds of it, you might get a little bit of an idea of what it's about, but you will have no resonance, no depth, no understanding, obviously. And if you slide the bar down and just pick any point in the video and watch for 5 seconds, you might get a little bit more, but obviously it's nowhere near the same as being gripped, captivated, mesmerized, hypnotized by what you're viewing. And a video is a shallow version because attention almost works like interest. It compounds with time. The first 10 seconds of attention is nowhere near as powerful as 5 minutes of attention. And 5 minutes of attention is nowhere near as powerful as 10 minutes. It gets increasingly stronger. And if you're able to sit and think about any given thing, you'll notice you'll eventually reach this point where it's almost like pieces of a puzzle that are slowly being put together as you think. And eventually you hit this point while you're thinking where you just get this sense of eureka, of understanding. You feel this part of you grow. You feel this geography expand. You feel all the little holes in between concepts fill up and plug in. You feel a shift psychologically and intellectually. And this can only happen if you sit and think for a long enough period of time. And I've experienced this many, many, many times. It could be 11 minutes in, it could be 20 minutes in. But the sensation, the feeling that you get from that is obviously different depending on the person and their intelligence, their just raw base intelligence and what a person knows and all of that, obviously. But some people can grasp in 5 minutes what another person grasps in 10 or 20. But that's not even the point. Over time, over life, you slowly expand your ability to pay attention. And those things that you pay attention to are twofold. One part is things that you are interested in, overtly, obviously, and clearly. Things that you know interest you, things that you know grab you. Things that you basically will into your life because of your love for it. And then there are interests that seem to come to you, that seem to appear in the static as this bright spot, and they seem to call. And those things are usually components of something you're already interested in, and you just don't know that it's a component yet, but it's something new that's being introduced to you that's somehow related to something that you already care about or are already interested in. Or it's something brand new that you just had no idea existed, and all of a sudden it just finds itself working itself deeper and deeper and deeper into you. One of the most powerful things a person can accomplish in their lifetime, and don't feel bad if you're in your 20s or your lower 30s and your attention is kind of fucked, because it does take time. Lots and lots of time. But one of the most important things a person can accomplish is a command of their primary language and their attention. The brain is extended through the entire body, through the nervous system. The brain is effectively the entire body. And the brain is the focal point. It's where all the senses come together and collapse and tune into this thing that's the stream, the going. And over time, you get used to bringing together all different sorts of information input. And over time, you find out what compels you. When you're a kid, your attention is basically non-existent. When you're a kid, you're so locked into the present. You're so there. There is no depth. There's barely any agency, and your consent is basically divvied off to the nearest adult, primarily your parents or your siblings. But as you age, the attention slowly gets deeper and deeper and deeper. When I was in school, the subjects, I mean, I was smart, I was great when I wanted to be, but I was just so boring, because it seemed like they would teach the same things over and over and over again. And once I understood something, I really didn't want to go over the same material. And it just became more of a social playground. The academic aspect was just utterly just mind-numbing. But as my 20s rolled along in my 30s, I came back around and started to find a love for the scholarly pursuits, you could say, that are available to a sort of freelance intellectual, because we do benefit from this just deep and wide plethora of information, of subjects that are neatly packaged, brought together, and presented in just so many forms. It's such a beautiful time to be alive, truly. It really is. Like, we are very, very lucky to be alive right now. And if you can manage, even worry is a form of honed attention, because worry can be good. Worry can force you to think about something until you get to that point where you know what you have to do to resolve that situation. And once you know what you have to do, the worry dissipates. You may think about it again because there's no action you can take for a week or two, but you're reminded of it from time to time, and maybe your heart jumps, and all that, but you don't sit there and dwell on it because you've already thought about it, you already know what you have to do, and it's going to be resolved. Because worry forced you to think. And then there's the other version where a person just worries, but they worry to lament, not to slowly move the pieces around until there's some sort of resolution. Because the human mind is this fantastic troubleshoot, very, very powerful troubleshoot, and it's always going. And it's so easy to identify with the troubleshoot and incorporate it as a part of our personalities. Some people, you'll notice, you'll meet them, are bleeding worry. They're bleeding unresolved problems, always out into the world and into you for you to import and for you to organize and pay attention to and give them some sort of resolution. And often they know the resolution, but they just don't do it. Sometimes a person has a long history of getting into messes, getting into tangles, and not resolving them, and they build and build and build and build and build until they're so far behind that the idea of getting ahead is such a complicated task just to get back to zero that they've basically resigned away from it and resort to activities and thoughts and habits and hobbies that prolong this state that can help them forget about the fact that they're so deep in a hole. I remember a long time ago I didn't have my license because I got into some trouble, and years went by where I didn't get my license, my driver's license, and in order to do a lot of other things, you have to have that. And I used that as a time to basically step out of society. This is when I really started to, I guess you could say, enter scholarly pursuits. And it wasn't on purpose. Me putting this stuff off and not doing the things I needed to do carved out this little place where I could resign myself and not really move ahead. But I needed to move ahead somehow, so I just started to study. And by the time I got my shit together, I had this other part now filled out, this intellectual part, this philosophical part. And honestly, sometimes you just don't know what good things your bad fortune is going to bring. A lot of the time we don't know what great events down the road will come as a direct result of misfortune. And the exact same is true for the other side of the coin. We don't know what disasters will come from this great thing that's happened. All the things in our lives that we could think of, all these different points in time where we could say, I could have done this or I could have done that. For all we know, had it gone any other way, we would have gotten blasted by a semi-truck or, for all we know, the bad things that happened to us kept us out of much worse disaster. But that was my lower 20s, and it's like I said, I just didn't have the power of attention, the wisdom, the ability, the will to solve these practical issues until later. And it really is one of those things that comes with time and age. And you almost have to take advantage of the era, the saga, the period of time that you're in. If you're young right now and your attention is weak and you're not very bright, take advantage of that to do other things, because there's a balance. If you're lacking in certain areas, there's going to be other areas that are strengthened. As other doors close, others open, and vice versa. But at some point or another, I would highly, highly recommend not just thinking when worry consumes you or your troubleshoot is active and drawing your attention to this or that. I would highly recommend that you just sit and think. Sit and think about existence itself, about your existence. Think about reality at large. Think about social dynamics. Think about what the combined sum of your existence means, what it's meant so far, and what that feels like now. Think about the people you've met. Think about how you've affected them, how they've affected you. Think about what you could look like. Think about what you could sound like. And at the same time, the mind is a miraculous thing. It leaves out things and it includes things. It forgets this and remembers that. And a lot of the time it seems arbitrary. But there is a symphony, just a beautiful orchestra of activity going on. A lot of the time, when your attention is being pulled and tugged in a certain direction that seems not relevant, more often than not, there is a reason. And one of the strange things is we can't truly know the fruits of what's happening now until later. And a person almost has to resign themselves to just trust reality and just trust events, trust God, trust this scheme, trust yourself. And it's a strange thing. The atom was split in Nazi Germany. I think it was 1939. And after that happened, I believe it was Oppenheimer who realized when you split that atom, a huge amount of energy is created. And there's almost a pre-atomic world and a post-atomic world. The splitting of the atom, the atomos, that which is uncuttable, made us realize certain things about this world. Things we were already well onto, but it really solidified certain things about us, about humans. And during that time, humanity had embarked on multiple social experiments that involved the resignation of an intelligent central creator and the embrace of an intelligent and central governing system that relied on it and it itself and the will of people. And these were horrible disasters. They were our first try at really creating societies and civilizations that were centrally planned and ignored the forces of markets and demand and supply and desire and consumption and production, that the natural laws that exist with those things, because there are natural laws that exist. In the Soviet Union, when they collectivized the farms, the people who worked on those farms, the people who were brought in, did not own the land, and they did not own the yield from the farms. They had to allow everything they produced to be collected by the authorities and brought to the cities and be redistributed. You weren't allowed to produce anything and sell it, because as soon as you produce something and sell it, capitalism begins. And that couldn't be allowed. And the reason why the Chinese were far more successful with their hybrid communism capitalism model is just for that reason, because it was these two opposing things that were based on natural market forces and rigid central planning combined together. Two opposing, completely opposite things. And the United States started as a market system, obviously, which completely depended on each and every individual using whatever drove them, whatever talents, whatever gifts and skills they had to produce this or that and then sell it. And over time, we've regulated more and more, and we've added more and more central planning, which to me is the more natural course. It seems like an unnatural course to jump straight to central planning and just, give it hell because the features and forces and activities of an economy, especially one like the Soviet Union or China or the United States, is so utterly complicated that it can be compared to a human body and its complexity. No single person or body that is of human composition is capable of weighing all the factors of a society in an economy and adequately distributing resources and collecting resources. It's simply not the case that that was even feasible, which sort of brought me back around with the Soviet Union to think that it was more a clever way to centralize power and strip people of their power-generating abilities and bring it all together under the hands of a few. It's ironic that a system was promised a workers' paradise, and it's in the capitalist countries where you have unions and workers' rights and all these different things that communism never had. It's a great irony. And all it ended up doing was making slaves of the people, totally disarmed, totally unprotected, government unrestrained, laws and the legal system based off of the personal desires of a political bureau that ebbs and flows, which makes it absolutely and completely meaningless. It makes it just a blur of static with no hope for ever becoming anything better. But one thinks almost that with Karl Marx, man, if that could have been like the ultimate psyop, like getting the Russian people, the Leninists, the Marxists, to believe that they could actually install this system. It was almost like a massive social experiment that led to millions of deaths in just the most god-awful possible system for a person to live in. And they eventually had to start adding normal market reforms. Over time, just like China had the exact same problem. They went straight to central planning in 1945, and it was an utter disaster. And over time, they had to add just regular market gears into the system in order to get it to work. And it resulted in just catastrophic. This is the point with that. The United States is wise to have a second First Amendment. As long as we can talk unfettered, we will get through things. And as long as the population is armed, they are sovereign. They have teeth. There's a silent deterrent from extreme overreach. And that's absolutely necessary. That is vital. I really feel for the places around the planet that have been disarmed even over the last 20, 30 years. Like, it's a real tragedy because you're literally giving away your power When the state owns the means of production and you are the means of production, you're a slave. Here in the United States, it's possible for an individual, without any backing of law, without ever being in government at all, to become one of the most powerful people on the planet. It's possible for a person in the United States to accrue so much potential through money and through resources, so much agency, so much power, just from their own desires, wills, and interests. A person is able to be armed, to speak their mind, to build wealth, to invest. Anybody. And it's grown this weird thing called a middle class. A middle class. Not just an upper class and a lower class. One in the middle. And that's the bulk of people. And the middle is always, generally, the most well-rounded position because you're powerful, you have your own property, you have your own family. Your destiny is in your hands. And when you're in the middle, you have enough free time to do other things than work. You have less responsibility. And there's just such a wide variety of things one can become in this system. So over time, obviously, unfettered capitalism is awful. It's child labor. It's terrible wages, terrible working conditions. So over time in the United States, there was movement after movement after movement after movement that slowly built up over time, more and more rights, more and more sovereignty, more and more power for the worker. And you get to this ratio, you get to this kind of sweet spot where the market is still free, you're still able to enter it and leave it, you're still able to have this incredible variety of things you can buy, and you can create anything, you can organize people and add anything to the market, you can create new areas of the market, you can create whole new markets within the market. And on top of that, it's the responsibility of the governing body to sensibly regulate the market. We did it the right way without maybe consciously knowing that we were doing it the right way. We started out with just this free-for-all, free market that started out with slavery, which is like, as far out on the spectrum as you can be. And over time, we slowly got more and more just, proper, and correct with our regulations, and leveling the playing field as much as possible without constraining one's ability to continue to grow. And as hopeless as it seems, as stacked against you as it may seem sometimes, consider that a period of time that will not last forever. Something happens when you hit 30. It seems like the world opens up. Something changes in you. And this is speaking from the male point of view. I have come to believe that women mature faster and develop faster in certain ways, but as far as I go, something happens when you hit 30. And where once it seemed like there was almost no potential and things seemed as if there weren't that many directions you can go, all of a sudden it seems like you can do just about anything. And we human beings have really got something going here. I'm not the sort of person who just speaks optimistically and tries to delusionally say optimistic things in the hope that good things happen. This, what I'm saying, is as accurate as I can say it, interpretation and explanation of my experience so far. And sometimes things can happen that send you to completely different levels of ability and skill that you didn't know you had. It is true that there's some sort of honor, there's some sort of nobility in doing work that's physically taxing, that's a trade like welding or framing or construction work. But that kind of work gets a man used to pain. It loads your nervous system up with pain all the time. Good pain. And after years of enduring that kind of pain, by comparison, social events, things that are going on, just don't affect you. They don't hurt. And I would never go so far as to say every man should experience good, strong, hard labor. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I had the option to be a model my entire life when I was 17. And I did it for 2 years, and after 2 years I was like, this isn't for me. Like, this isn't my scene, you know. I liked sweating. I liked rigorous activity. I liked using my body. I liked strength. And in terms of testosterone, in terms of your day-to-day experience as a male, I can really only speak for men on this one, but if you are not physically strong, you are not living within you're not having the full male experience. In order to have a full human male experience, you need to be physically strong. Without that, you're missing a huge component of what you are. And your life, your day-to-day life, is far easier when you're physically strong. Things around you move easier. People move easier. Everything is lighter. You can do things for longer. You look better. And if you're not lifting weights, you need to be doing something that utilizes your body in some way that's rigorous. This is mandatory. If you're a dude and your life sucks and shit just doesn't feel right, it's not going well, and you're not physically strong, that's where you begin. Above all else, you don't need to be some jacked, dude looking in the mirror all the time who's obsessed with, bodybuilding or whatever. But man, you just need to be strong, and you need to experience pain, physical pain, all the time, because your nervous system truly does adjust and grow and adapt and build with what you load onto it. You need to be loading pain onto it, not emotional pain. Fuck that. Nobody should intentionally be importing emotional pain. Physical pain, on the other hand, that is excellent. And I'm not saying kill yourself, but you need to be experiencing pain. And to fill that out, to round that out as a man, with the physical aspect covered, you also need the intellectual aspect. You need the psychological, philosophical aspect. You need to be the sort of person who rests in a certain calm, who is somehow calm, always calm, unless you need to do something extreme. But I'm talking on a day-to-day basis, like these things that you experience. If you avoid pain, if you don't hurt yourself, if you don't break your muscles down, if you don't bring some sort of pain into your world, those things that do come along will affect you so much. They will cut you so deep. And you will be moved by every gust of wind that comes by. You will be pushed around. Your agency will be lessened. And you will not feel well on a day-to-day basis. You need to be enduring some sort of physical pain, some sort of physical activity. And you need to be thinking. You need to be studying. You need to get it to where when you speak, it's almost like a form of hypnosis. You're not trying to hypnotize people, but that's just what it feels like when somebody's saying something interesting and you're listening. And you also need to be able to listen. And let people hypnotize you. Let people draw you in to where your attention just slowly collapses. Your nervous system just slowly comes together and draws into that person, listening to what they're saying. And they're allowed to paint on your imagination. They're allowed to do with it what they will. And in that, you truly respond to what's happening. You truly have a conversation. You truly pass energy, soul, life back and forth. And you resonate. You both, or say you're in a group, the entire group slowly just elevates up and up and up, and they all hypnotize each other, in a sense, or command each other's interest or attention, or charm each other, or make each other laugh. They're all slowly focusing in and tuning into the same wavelength. You notice how certain groups feel a certain way and certain other groups feel another way. Every group has a different tune, a different wavelength, a different frequency that they're operating on. And this thing slowly smelts and bends and twists and warps over time to slowly become what it is. But as far as you're concerned, you are the center of the universe. Because any point in this universe can be considered the center. And this while also understanding that everybody else is the center of the universe, but you're interested in your center, because as far as your sphere, your circle, your immediate proximity is concerned, you are where the gravity collapses and comes together. You're the focal point. You are the sharp attention center, as well as the ever-expansive, radiating sense of attention as well. And more than anything, I would implore you to just think, even while you're at work, no matter what you're doing, take some time to really think and go through it without waiting for anything to happen, without waiting for eureka moments or anything. Just think things through step by step, and you'll notice over time you'll have these moments where everything locks together just right, and it's this eureka. And over time, as you think about more and more things, these eurekas come together into larger eurekas and into larger eurekas. And things mold more and more and more and more. And this begins to shape how you feel on a day-to-day basis and how you experience reality.